My stepsister and her husband moved into my apartment after losing their place. Just until we get back on our feet, she said. 2 weeks later, I came home to find my bedroom rented out to a stranger. You weren't using it much anyway, she shrugged. The next day, I put all their stuff on the curb and changed the locks. I should have known better. I really should have. When my stepsister, Tessa, called me one night, her voice tight with panic, I already had a bad feeling. The kind of feeling you get when you see a text from an ex who only ever reaches out when they need something. It's just until we get back on our feet, she said. A couple of weeks, max. I could already hear the lie in her voice. Tessa and I weren't close. Never had been. We weren't even blood related. Her dad married my mom when we were both in high school, and we tolerated each other at best. She was the wild one, always making bad choices and expecting someone else to clean up the mess. And her husband, Wes? A complete deadbeat. A guy who spent more time coming up with get-rich-quick schemes than actually holding down a job. Now, according to Tessa, they had been evicted. Wes had lost his job a few months back, and they'd fallen behind on rent. Their landlord had enough and kicked them out. They had no money, no place to go, and no one else to ask. I wanted to say no. I really did. But guilt is a funny thing. I thought about my mother, how she would have wanted me to help. I thought about the fact that, despite our differences, Tessa was technically family. And I thought, what's 2 weeks? So, like an idiot, I said yes. They showed up the next day with nothing but 2 suitcases and a plastic bin full of their belongings. No furniture, no boxes, just the bare minimum. Which meant one thing, they'd lost everything. I had a 2-bedroom apartment, decent sized for one person. Clean, quiet mine. I worked long hours as a software developer, so I figured the arrangement wouldn't be too bad. I'd barely be home. I set up the 2nd bedroom for them and gave them a key. Just until you figure things out, I reminded them. Tessa gave me one of those tight, insincere smiles. Of course, you're a lifesaver. Wes just nodded and flopped onto the couch like he already owned the place. I ignored the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. It didn't take long for things to go downhill. The first few days were bad, but manageable. Tessa and Wes weren't clean people, but I tried to let it slide. Tried. I came home one night to a sink overflowing with dirty dishes. The trash can was so full, someone had just started stacking garbage on top of it. My once pristine couch was covered in crumbs and stained with God knows what. At first, I bit my tongue. Then, there was the noise. I liked my peace and quiet, but Wes? He was always either watching some explosion-filled action movie at full volume or screaming into his headset while playing video games. And Tessa? She was always on the phone, whining to her friends about how unfair life was. How she and Wes just needed a break to get back on their feet. That was rich. They weren't even looking for jobs. I came home one afternoon and found them exactly where I had left them, sprawled on the couch, in the same pajamas from the day before, watching reality TV. Did you apply anywhere today? I asked, trying to keep my frustration in check. Tessa sighed dramatically. Ugh, not yet. It's just so hard to know where to start. I glanced at Wes. He didn't even look up from his game. You know, I said, leaning against the wall. Most people start by filling out an application. Tessa rolled her eyes. God, don't be a jerk. I clenched my jaw and walked away. I was done playing nice. 2 weeks came and went. They hadn't paid a dime for rent. They hadn't cleaned a single thing. They hadn't even pretended to look for work. And I had had enough. I came home late one Friday, exhausted from work, dreading the mess I'd have to clean up just to enjoy my own damn apartment. But nothing could have prepared me for what I walked into. I opened my bedroom door, expecting the familiar sight of my unmade bed, my laptop on my desk, my private space. Instead, there was a man, a stranger, just standing there like he belonged. Oh, hey, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. You must be the roommate. Roommate? I turned so fast I nearly gave myself whiplash. Tessa and Wes were lounging on the couch like nothing was wrong. Tessa, I said, voice dangerously low. Who the HLL is in my bedroom? She barely glanced up. Oh, that's Drew. I waited for an explanation. It didn't come. I turned to Wes. And he shrugged. He's renting it for a while. I blinked. He's what? Tessa rolled her eyes, like I was the crazy one. You're barely home anyway. It just made sense. I laughed. Actually, I laughed. You hold on. You rented out my bedroom. We needed the money, Tessa said, as if that made it better. It's not a big deal. You can just sleep on the couch. I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. It never came. They were serious. Something inside me snapped. I didn't sleep. I was too busy planning. At 6 a.m., I grabbed trash bags and started packing their crap. I didn't care what was theirs and what wasn't. Everything went into bags. By 8 a.m., I was dragging their stuff to the curb. By 9 a.m., I was at a hardware store buying new locks. By 10 a.m., I was back, arms crossed, waiting. Tessa and Wes came stumbling out of their room. My room, still half asleep. Tessa blinked at the empty space where their things used to be. Where's our stuff? Outside, I said flatly. Where you'll be in about 5 minutes. Wes frowned. Dude, you can't just, I can. And I did. I pointed to the door. Tessa's face turned red. You're seriously kicking us out? Over a bedroom? I laughed. A real, bitter laugh. Not just over a bedroom. Over the constant mess. The freeloading. The fact that you never even tried to get jobs. And oh yeah, the fact that you rented out my goddamn room behind my back. Tessa opened her mouth, probably to argue, but I wasn't interested. I grabbed my screwdriver and got to work. By the time I was done changing the locks, they were gone. And for the first time in weeks, I could finally breathe. By the time I had finished changing the locks, my hands were still shaking. Not from fear. No, I wasn't afraid of them. I was furious. I sat down on the couch, staring at the locked door, half expecting them to come back and start banging on it. But the apartment was quiet. For the first time in weeks, there was no shouting, no loud explosions from Wes's stupid action movies, no passive-aggressive sighs from Tessa. Just silence. It should have been a relief. So why did I feel like I was waiting for a BMB to go off? I stood up and went to the window. Their stuff was still on the curb. I half expected them to be standing there, glaring up at my window, but there was no sign of them. Good. I grabbed my phone and texted my best friend, Sean. Me. I finally kicked them out. A minute later, my phone buzzed. Sean, about damn time. What happened? I stared at the screen, debating how much to say. Then I just typed. Me. They rented out my bedroom while I was at work. Sean's reply came almost immediately. Sean, you're lying. Me wish I was. Sean, dude. If I was you, I'd be in jail for homicide right now. I snorted. Sean always knew how to lighten the mood. Still, as I sat there, the adrenaline from the morning started to wear off, and exhaustion hit me like a truck. I had barely slept. I hadn't even eaten. I stood up, stretching, and headed toward my bedroom. My actual bedroom. The one those souls had rented out. I hesitated before opening the door. It felt weird, like I was stepping into someone else's space. Even though it was mine, it didn't feel like it. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The bed was a mess. The sheets were tangled, the pillows shoved to the side. I could already tell they weren't my sheets. These were some cheap, scratchy-looking things that I would never buy. The whole room smelled different too. Stale cologne, body odor, and something else, something gross and sour. I gagged. I crossed the room, yanked the sheets off the bed, and threw them straight into the trash. I'd burn them if I could. As I moved to the closet, something caught my eye. A wallet. I frowned and picked it up. It wasn't mine. Which meant, Drew, the guy they rented my room to. I flipped it open. His ID was inside. Drew Parker. Looked to be in his late 20s. A couple of worn-out dollar bills were shoved in the cash pocket, along with a crumpled receipt from some gas station. I exhaled sharply. Just what I needed, one more thing to deal with. I tossed the wallet on the nightstand and stepped back. I needed to air out the room. Maybe burn some sage. Or just burn the whole apartment down and start fresh. As I cracked the window, my phone buzzed again. Tessa. I stared at the screen. I wasn't stupid enough to answer, but curiosity got the best of me. I opened the text. Tessa, wow? Seriously? You threw our stuff in the street? I rolled my eyes. Me. You rented out my bedroom, Tessa. 3 dots appeared. Then it disappeared. Then reappeared. Finally, Tessa, we had no choice. You don't understand what we're going through. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Me, no. You don't understand. This was in my apartment. My space. And you went behind my back like it was nothing. Another pause. Tessa, you're so selfish. You couldn't even let us stay until we found somewhere else. I let out a humorless laugh. The audacity. Me, you had 2 weeks. You did nothing. I'm done. I didn't wait for a reply. I blocked her number. I should have felt better after that. But something told me this wasn't over. Not even close. I spent the rest of the afternoon deep cleaning my apartment. I scrubbed the floors, wiped down every surface, and took out the trash twice just to get rid of any lingering scent of them. I even sprayed air freshener in every room. By evening, I was starting to feel normal again. I ordered some takeout, put on a movie, and stretched out on my couch, in my clean, quiet apartment. I had earned this peace. Or so I thought. Around 9 p.m., there was a loud bang on my door. I froze. Another bang. Then a voice I knew all too well. Open the damn door, you piece of crap. Wes. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I wasn't surprised. No way that guy was going to let this go quietly. But I wasn't about to let him stomp back in here like he owned the place. I stood up, rolled my shoulders, and walked to the door. I didn't open it. Go away, Wes, I said through the door. Another bang. You really think you can just throw us out like trash? Yes, I said, completely unfazed. Because that's what you are. Silence. Then a low, angry laugh. You think you're some big shot, huh? Sitting up in your fancy apartment, looking down on us. I pinched the bridge of my nose. You're homeless because of your own choices. Not mine. I expected more yelling, maybe another bang on the door. But instead, Wes's voice dropped lower, more controlled. You'll regret this. A chill ran down my spine. For a second, I considered calling the cops. But then, just as suddenly as he came, I heard footsteps retreating down the hall. I waited, counted to 30. Then, cautiously, I looked through the peephole. Wes was gone, but that uneasy feeling was back, heavier than before. I didn't know what he meant by "you'll regret this," but I had a feeling I was going to find out. And soon. I didn't sleep well that night. Even though Wes had left, his words stuck with me. "You'll regret this." I tried to tell myself it was just an empty threat, that he was all bark and no bite. But knowing him, he wasn't the type to just let something go. He'd find a way to make my life harder. I just didn't know how yet. The next morning, I woke up feeling restless. I checked outside first thing, half expecting to find my car keyed or my tires slashed, but everything looked normal. Maybe I was overthinking it. I showered, grabbed some coffee, and sat down at my desk to start work. I was in the middle of my first meeting when my phone started buzzing, nonstop. I ignored it at first. Then I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Unknown number. Voicemail. Missed call. Unknown number. What the HLL? Then an email popped up on my work laptop. Subject. Urgent. Complaint against you. I clicked it. It was from my apartment complex's management office. Dear, my name. We've received multiple complaints regarding unauthorized subleasing and disturbances coming from your unit. Please contact us immediately to discuss this matter, as it may result in lease violations or eviction proceedings. Best, building manager. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and called the office. It rang twice before someone picked up. Yeah. Hey, this is my name, I said quickly. I just got an email about complaints. What's going on? There was a pause. Then the manager, Lisa, sighed. We received multiple reports that you were illegally renting out your apartment and causing disturbances. I felt my blood pressure spike. Lisa, you know me. That's not true. I had family staying with me for a couple of weeks, but they're gone now. Well, she said hesitantly. Someone has been calling all morning, claiming they were scammed by you. I knew who it was before she even said it. Tessa and Wes, I muttered. Yeah, I think that was the name, Lisa admitted. They said you charged them rent and then threw them out illegally. They also claimed you were still renting out your place to other people. I almost laughed. Lisa, I don't even have a roommate. I believe you, she said, sounding apologetic. But we have to take complaints seriously. I'll need to document everything. Can you come down to the office today? I rubbed my temples. Yeah, I'll be there soon. I hung up and exhaled sharply. Tessa and Wes were trying to screw me over again. I should have expected it. But what they didn't know was that I was done playing nice. The payback plan after clearing things up with Lisa at the leasing office, I sat in my car, thinking. I could have let it go. I could have ignored their pathetic little revenge attempt and moved on with my life. But why should I? They had spent weeks trashing my apartment, freeloading off me, renting out my bedroom, and now trying to get me evicted? No, they weren't getting away with this. I pulled out my phone and started digging. It didn't take me long to find Tessa's public social media accounts. She was still whining about being unfairly kicked out, except now, she was begging for money. There was a link to a GoFundMe titled, "Help Us Get Back on Our Feet," and it had almost $800 in donations. I clenched my jaw. Unbelievable. I scrolled through the description. She wrote some sob story about how she and Wes were tricked into paying rent to a cruel family member, only to be thrown out without warning. She completely flipped the story. But that wasn't even the worst part. The comment section was full of sympathy. Strangers were calling me a heartless monster while donating their hard-earned money to these scammers. That's when I got an idea. A very, very good idea. I took screenshots of everything, text messages, emails, and even a recording I had from the day I confronted them about renting my room. Then, I made a new Reddit post under an anonymous account. Title, "My stepsister and her husband are scamming people. Here's proof." I detailed everything. How they lied, how they never paid rent, how they rented out my room behind my back. I attached all the screenshots, including Tessa's GoFundMe scam. I posted the link everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, local community groups. And then, I waited. It took less than an hour for people to start blowing up her fundraiser. Comments flooded in. Wow, you're actual garbage. I was about to donate. Thank God I saw this first. Reported to GoFundMe. Enjoy the ban, scammer. People ripped her apart. By the end of the day, the GoFundMe was shut down. And the best part? Someone recognized Wes from a job interview he had recently been bed. They sent his potential employer the Reddit thread, costing him the job before he even got it. I still wasn't done. Remember how I found Drew's wallet in my apartment? I had his ID, his address, and his phone number. I reached out to him. Turns out, Drew had no idea that Tessa and Wes weren't the actual owners of the apartment. He thought they lived there and were just renting out their extra room. When I told him the truth, he was pissed. So, I gave him Tessa's phone number. I don't know exactly what he said to her, but based on the frantic texts I got later, I'm guessing she didn't take it well. Tessa tried calling me from different numbers for a few days. I ignored every single one. Eventually, the messages stopped. A week later, I found out through mutual friends that she and Wes were completely broke and living out of a motel. No jobs, no money, no more scams. And I I was finally free. I sat back on my couch, stretched my arms behind my head, and smiled. For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. And it felt damn good.